2147. The legacy of the Metal Wars, when man fought machine and machines won. Biodreads, monstrous creations that hunt down human survivors. But from the fires of the Metal Wars arose a new breed of warrior. They were soldiers of the future. Mankind's last hope. Captain Power and the soldiers of the future.
You know what nobody talks about anymore? Captain Power and the soldiers of the future. And look, I get it. If you weren't there in 1987, glued to your TV on Saturday afternoons with your plastic jet fighter pointed at the screen, this show probably flew completely under your radar. But here's the thing. This wasn't just another forgotten toy show from the 80s. This was the show that did full CGI characters on television, before anyone else. This was the show that let you literally shoot at your TV and the TV shot back. And this was the show that had parents and politicians so freaked out that they basically killed it before it ever had a chance. But what you probably don't know is that Captain Power was written by the guy who'd go on to create Babylon 5, that the toys were such a financial disaster they're now worth thousands of dollars, and that there was supposed to be a second season featuring television's first cybersex scene. Yeah, you heard that right. So today, I'm going to walk you through the complete rise and fall of Captain Power, how it became a technological marvel that arrived way too early, why it terrified the people who were supposed to protect children's programming, and how a show that lost millions in the 80s almost came back, until a very real scandal killed it for good. Trust me on this. If you thought you knew everything about 80s toy shows, you're about to have your mind blown. The vision when toy shows got ambitious. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 1987. Reagan's in the White House. The FCC just deregulated children's programming, and every single toy company realized they could basically make 22-minute commercials for their products and call them cartoons. You remember this era, right? G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man. These weren't shows first and toys second. They were merchandise delivery systems with animation slapped on top, and it worked. Hasbro was printing money. But here's where Captain Power was different. Two guys, Gary Goddard and Tony Christopher, they're running this company called Landmark Entertainment Group. These aren't toy executives. These are theme park designers. They're used to creating immersive experiences, not selling plastic to kids. And they partnered with Mattel, who at this point is looking at Hasbro making a killing and thinking, we need our own action figure empire. So what do they pitch? They pitch something insane. They want to make a post-apocalyptic science fiction show about a war between humans and machines, set in the 22nd century, where the main character's father accidentally created an AI that went rogue and started digitizing people, basically uploading human consciousness into computers and trapping them there forever. And Mattel's sitting there like, cool. But can we also make it so kids can shoot at the TV? Now, here's what makes this show genuinely fascinating. They hired J. Michael Straczynski as head writer. If that name doesn't mean anything to you, just know that this is the guy who'd later create Babylon 5, one of the most sophisticated science fiction shows of the 90s. They also brought in Mark Scott Zicree and Larry DiTillio, who were legitimate sci-fi writers, not hacks cranking out toy commercials. These guys wanted to write real science fiction. They wanted romance. They wanted philosophy. They wanted to talk about fascism. They literally had characters getting tortured, brainwashed, and killed on screen. One episode featured the Biodread Youth, which was basically the Hitler Youth with robots. And Mattel's over here going, that's great, but you've got to leave us 3 minutes every episode so the kids can shoot their toy planes at the screen. You see the problem, right? There's this fundamental tension baked into Captain Power from day one. Half the people making it wanted to create groundbreaking science fiction television. The other half wanted to sell toys to 8-year-olds. And somehow, they actually pulled it off. For 22 episodes anyway. Alright, let's talk about the tech, because this is where things get really wild. Remember, this is 1987. The Simpsons doesn't exist yet. The internet is something only academics use. Your computer at home, if you even had one, probably couldn't display more than 4 colors at once. And Captain Power is doing fully computer-generated characters on television. Not backgrounds, not special effects. Actual characters named Soren and Blastar, a flying robot and a ground artillery unit that moved around and interacted with the live-action actors. They were flying through scenes, shooting at people, having conversations. It was Star Wars-level ambition on a television budget. And they got a Gemini Award for it. The Canadian TV industry looked at what they were doing and said, "Holy crap, this is incredible." But here's the thing. It was expensive. Ridiculously expensive. Each episode cost at least $1 million to produce. In 1987, money. For syndicated television. That's insane. For comparison, most syndicated shows were operating on a quarter of that budget. Maybe less. Why so expensive? Because they were compositing 5 layers of film by hand. You've got your live action, your miniature models, your CGI characters, your animated smoke effects, and the light pulses for the interactive toys, all being layered together manually in post-production. 1 frame at a time. If they screwed up, they couldn't just hit undo. They had to start over. And then there's the interactive toy system, which, okay, I've got to explain this because it's both brilliant and completely doomed. Mattel created these toy vehicles. The XT-7 Powerjet was the main one that had light sensors on them. During the show, the screen would flash these specific light patterns that the toy could detect. So you're sitting there, as a kid, pointing your jet at Soren on the TV, pulling the trigger, and if you hit him, you score points. Your toy keeps track. But here's the genius part, and the terrifying part if you're a child. The TV shoots back. If the enemy hits you, your toy registers the damage. You've got this little LED damage meter that depletes. And when you lose all your life points, the toy physically ejects the pilot figure out of the cockpit with a spring-loaded mechanism. Your toy literally says, "You died, kid. Better luck next time." This is basically the precursor to Skylanders, to Amiibo, to every Toys to Life game that would come decades later. They were doing interactive gaming merged with broadcast television in 1987. The problem? It barely worked. See, the sensors needed specific lighting conditions. If your living room was too bright, too dark, had the wrong kind of TV, or if you were just sitting at the wrong angle, the whole system would glitch out. Kids figured out they could cheat by just covering the sensor. The toys were fragile, and Mattel had overproduced them massively, betting on this being the next G.I. Joe. It wasn't. The toys sat on shelves. Then they got clearanced out to bargain bins. Then Mattel actually recalled and destroyed most of the remaining stock, which means today, those failed toys from 1987 sell for $500 to $3,000, depending on condition. The things that were in bargain bins for $3 are now high-value collectibles because they're so rare. That's the ultimate irony of Captain Power. It failed so hard that it became valuable. The darkness. When kids' TV got too real. Now let's talk about why this show was so different from everything else on TV, and why that difference got it killed. You've got to remember what Saturday morning cartoons were like in the 80s. G.I. Joe? Nobody ever got hurt. You could literally shoot 1,000 lasers at somebody, and they'd just parachute away. Totally fine. Transformers? Sure, robots blow up, but they're robots. Who cares? Even when they killed Optimus Prime in the movie, they brought him back because kids were traumatized. Captain Power said, "Nah, we're not doing that." In the world of Captain Power, there's been a nuclear war called the Metal Wars. Humanity tried to replace soldiers with robots to minimize casualties, which is actually a pretty cool idea. But then this scientist, Dr. Lyman Taggart, links his consciousness directly with an AI called Overmind. Because why wouldn't you plug your brain into a supercomputer without safety protocols? And Overmind decides that humanity is flawed. Biological life is inferior, and the next stage of evolution is merging people with machines, whether they like it or not. So they don't kill people. They digitize them. You get hit by the wrong weapon, and your entire consciousness gets uploaded into Overmind's computer system. You're not dead. You're trapped. Forever. In a computer. Fully aware. That's horrifying if you actually think about it. It's a fate worse than death, and they're doing this on a show that's supposed to sell toys to second graders. But wait, it gets darker. Lord Dredd, that's what Taggart calls himself now. He's running Project New Order, which is literally a eugenics program to cleanse humanity of biological imperfection. The show has an episode about the Bio-Dread youth, which is kids being indoctrinated to believe digitization is a gift. They show people getting tortured. They show the consequences of war. And then they end season 1 by killing off a main character. Corporal Jennifer Pilot Chase, played by Jessica Steen, fan favorite character. She gets mortally wounded when Lord Dredd attacks the power base, and she chooses to stay behind and blow up the entire base with herself inside it to take out the Bio-Dread army. She dies. On screen. Heroically, but still. She's dead. The base is destroyed. Lord Dredd wins. And the season ends with him getting a cybernetic upgrade that removes the last of his human flesh. The bad guy literally gets more powerful as the credits roll. Now name me another toy show from the 80s that had the balls to do that. You can't, because they didn't exist. And this is where the writer's vision and Mattel's toy-selling mission completely collided. Because J. Michael Straczynski and his team wanted to tell a genuine, serialized, dark science fiction story where actions had consequences. They wanted character deaths. They wanted moral ambiguity. They wanted to talk about what it means to be human in a world where the line between man and machine is blurring. Mattel wanted to sell plastic jets that shot at your TV. And the parent groups? Oh man, they lost their minds. See, let me introduce you to Peggy Charon. She ran an organization called Action for Children's Television, ACT for short, and she was basically the final boss of children's programming in the 80s. When Peggy Charon said something was bad for kids, networks listened. And Peggy Charon hated Captain Power. Her argument was twofold, and honestly, it wasn't completely wrong. First, she said the interactive toys created a class divide. If you didn't buy the toys, you couldn't unlock the full experience of the show. Rich kids could play along. Poor kids just watched. You were literally making children buy a product to fully participate in a television show, and that felt exploitative. Second, and this is where she really hammered them, the show was violent. Not cartoon violence, where lasers miss and nobody gets hurt. Real, consequence, heavy. People get digitized and trapped. Forever violence. Characters died. People got tortured. The bad guys won sometimes. This wasn't slapstick. This was war. And she made it national news. CNN ran segments. Time magazine wrote about it. The question being asked was, should children be shooting at their television screens? Think about that optic for a second. You're a parent in 1987, and your kid is sitting 2 feet from the TV, pointing a toy gun at the screen, pulling a trigger, trying to shoot the characters. Even if you understand that it's just light sensors and harmless fun, it looks bad. It looks like you're training kids to be aggressive toward media. Plus, the Reagan administration had just deregulated children's TV, which meant shows could have way more commercial time and basically be commercials. Watchdog groups were already on high alert for exploitation. Captain Power walked right into their crosshairs. And then there's this. The 1990 Children's Television Act was already being written. It would require broadcasters to provide educational and informational content for kids. Captain Power was the opposite of that. It was a dark, violent, toy-driven sci-fi show that made no pretense of being educational. So Mattel's looking at this situation and realizing we're about to be the poster child for everything wrong with kids' TV. The toys aren't selling, we're spending $1 million an episode, and new regulations are coming that might kill us anyway. The writing was on the wall. The fall, when the money ran out. So here's how it all collapsed. The show's entire business model depended on toy sales offsetting production costs. That $1 million per episode budget wasn't sustainable from syndication revenue alone. They needed kids buying the power jets and the action figures and all the accessories. But the toys didn't sell. They just sat there. Maybe it was because the interactive feature didn't work reliably. Maybe it was because parents saw the controversy and didn't want to buy into it. Maybe it was because G.I. Joe and Transformers had already saturated the market. Whatever the reason, Mattel overproduced, oversupplied, and underperformed. The company started hemorrhaging money. We're talking a genuine financial disaster. So at the end of season 1, after 22 episodes, after that gutsy finale, after building this dark, complex world, Mattel pulled the plug. Just done. No warning, no second chances. But here's the tragic part. Season 2 was already written. Not outlined. Written. Full scripts. And from what Larry DiTillio has revealed over the years, it was going to be bonkers. The Power Team was going to be living in underground passages called the Passages because their base was destroyed. Lord Dredd was accelerating Project New Order toward its final phase, which involved igniting a plasma storm to scorch the Earth's surface and kill anyone who wasn't already digitized. There was going to be a 5-part arc called The Archers, about a high-tech tribal group. There was an episode about mutants created by bio-dread experiments on a tropical island, which honestly sounds like it would have been incredible. And then there's A Passion Forged in Steel, written by Steve Gerber. This script introduced a character named Morgana, who had a complex history with Lord Dredd. And according to DiTillio, this episode was going to feature what would have been television's first cybersex scene, where Dredd and Morgana interface their minds through machine technology to experience digital intimacy. Now, it probably would have been abstract, metaphorical, not explicit, but still, the concept of cybersex on a show that was supposed to sell toys to children? That tells you everything about how ambitious and weird and completely out of step this show was with its own mission. None of it ever got made. Season 2 died on the page. 22 episodes of dark, sophisticated science fiction that proved a show could be too good, too smart, and too expensive to survive in 1988. The legacy, from bargain bins to cult classic. So the show's canceled, the toys are being clearanced out, and Captain Power fades into obscurity, right? Not quite. See, something weird happened. Because the show only lasted 1 season, and Mattel destroyed so much overstock, it became rare. And a generation of kids who remembered shooting at their TVs on Saturday afternoons grew up, got jobs, and suddenly had disposable income and nostalgia. Those toys that were in bargain bins for $2.99, they're selling for $500, $1,000, sometimes $3,000 if they're still in the box. The XT7 Power Jet that nobody wanted became a high-value collectible because it failed so spectacularly. The show itself got a cult following. People started recognizing that J. Michael Straczynski had worked on it. They realized the scripts were actually sophisticated. They appreciated that it tried to do something different when every other toy show was content to be mediocre. And then, in 2012, Gary Goddard announced a revival, Phoenix Rising. It was going to be a 1-hour drama, a direct sequel set 28 years later. Original cast coming back. Jonathan Power, now middle-aged, dealing with his father's legacy again. The concept was exploring transhumans. People who successfully merged with technology instead of being digitized against their will. They released a teaser at San Diego Comic-Con in 2016. It looked incredible. Much better production values, modern CGI, a darker tone. The fan base went wild. After nearly 30 years, Captain Power was coming back. And then it all fell apart again. In late 2017, Anthony Edwards, you know him from ER, published an essay accusing Gary Goddard of sexually abusing him when Edwards was a child. Other accusers came forward with similar stories. Goddard denied the allegations, but the damage was done. Phoenix Rising was dead within weeks. Networks didn't want to touch it. The brand became radioactive overnight, so Captain Power died twice. Once in 1988, because it was too expensive and too controversial. And again in 2017, because the guy who created it got credibly accused of horrible things. Here's the thing about Captain Power that makes it so fascinating to look back on. It was right about almost everything, just a decade too early. Interactive TV merged with gaming. That eventually became a billion-dollar industry with Skylanders and Amiibo. CGI characters integrated with live action. That's now standard in every sci-fi show. Dark, serialized storytelling aimed at older audiences. That became the entire prestige TV era. J. Michael Straczynski went on to create Babylon 5, which was basically what Captain Power could have been if given the chance. Complex, serialized science fiction with real consequences. But in 1987, none of that infrastructure existed. The technology wasn't quite there. The audience wasn't ready. The regulatory environment was hostile. And the business model of spend $1 million per episode to sell toys didn't work when the toys didn't sell. So you've got this show that tried to innovate in every direction at once. Storytelling, visual effects, audience engagement, and it just collapsed under its own ambition. The creators wanted to make art. The financiers wanted to make money. The activists wanted to protect children, and nobody could agree on what Captain Power was actually for. It was a show before its time. A beautiful, expensive, ambitious failure that proved you can be too innovative for your own good. And you know what? I kind of love that about it. Because in an era of bland, safe, focus-grouped content designed to offend nobody and sell everything, Captain Power said, let's make something weird and dark and different, even if it kills us. And it did kill them. But at least they went down swinging. If you remember this show, drop a comment and tell me, did you have the toys? Did they actually work? Did your parents freak out about you shooting at the TV? I want to hear your stories, because this is the kind of 80s weirdness that deserves to be remembered. Thanks for watching. Power on.